Divorce papers. Never thought I'd see my signature on such a document, yet here we are. I stare at the formal documents spread across my kitchen table, my pen hovering uncertainly above the signature line. Outside, rain taps against the windows of my apartment, matching the rhythm of my heartbeat. The lawyer had been clear. Once signed, there was no going back. 5 years of marriage dissolved with a simple stroke of ink. My phone buzzes beside me. Jason's name flashes on the screen for the fourth time tonight. I let it ring. The clock on the wall reads 11:47 p.m. The apartment feels too quiet, too empty. On the refrigerator door, there's still a photo of us from happier times. Jason and me at his parent anniversary party, his arm around my waist, my smile not quite reaching my eyes. I should have seen it then. I pick up the pen and sign my name, Eleanor Hargreaves. Soon to be Eleanor Collins again. As I finish the final stroke, my phone vibrates once more. This time, it's not Jason, but Michael, my colleague and the only person who truly understands what I've been going through. Have you done it? He asks when I answer. Just now, I reply, my voice steadier than I expected. How do you feel? I consider this as I look around the apartment that Jason and I once shared, at the spaces where his things used to be, at the lingering evidence of our life together. Surprisingly calm, I answer. Like I finally stopped trying to save someone who never wanted to be saved. There's silence on the other end. Then Michael speaks softly. Your research proposal was approved today. Full funding. I close my eyes, letting this news wash over me. You're kidding. Unanimous decision. They want to fast-track the neural interface trials. For the first time in months, I feel something like joy bubbling up inside me. My work, the one thing that has always been mine, the one thing they couldn't take from me. Eleanor? Michael's voice pulls me back. Are you still there? Yes, I say, opening my eyes to look once more at the divorce papers. I'm still here, and I'm ready to move forward. As I hang up, I realize that ending my marriage isn't just about leaving Jason. It's about leaving behind a pattern that has defined my entire life, putting others' needs before my own, seeking approval that never comes, pouring my resources into bottomless pits. It started with my parents and my brother, and it continued with my husband. But it ends tonight. I gather the divorce papers into a folder and place it by the door for tomorrow's meeting with the lawyer. Then I open my laptop and pull up the research files Michael and I have been working on for the past 3 years. Neural interface technology for paralysis patients. Our work has been promising, but with full funding, we can finally make real progress. My phone buzzes again. Jason. This time, I turn it off completely. Tonight, I choose myself. Tonight, I choose my work. Tonight, I begin again. Flashback 6 months earlier, 6 months earlier, I sat at my parents' dining table, pushing food around my plate while my brother Jason dominated the conversation. My husband sat beside me, nodding eagerly at everything my brother said. It's a complete breakthrough in medical equipment distribution, Jason was saying, gesturing with his fork. The problem with current systems is they're too centralized. My approach creates a direct pipeline from manufacturer to clinic. Fascinating, my father Robert said, refilling Jason's wine glass. At 75, my father still maintained the commanding presence that had served him well as a corporate attorney. Don't you think so, Eleanor? I looked up from my barely touched salmon. I'm not sure I understand the business model. How is this different from existing distribution channels? My mother Martha made that familiar clicking sound with her tongue. Always so analytical, Eleanor. Not everything needs to be dissected. I'm just asking for clarification, I said, feeling the familiar tightness in my chest that accompanied these family dinners. At 48, I was still treated like the difficult child who asked too many questions. The difference? Jason leaned forward, his charismatic smile flashing, is relationships. I've built connections with key decision makers at 15 major hospital groups. My husband Jason squeezed my hand under the table. Your brother's always been a natural networker, he said admiringly. Not everyone has that gift. I withdrew my hand, remembering how Jason, my Jason, had once admired my research with the same enthusiasm. Now, 3 years into our marriage, his fascination had shifted entirely to my brother and his get-rich-quick schemes. Here's the thing, my brother continued, pulling out his tablet to show a sleek presentation. We've got everything lined up: distribution agreements, storage facilities, transportation. All we need is operating capital for the first 6 months. How much? I asked, already knowing where this was heading. 200,000, Jason said casually, as if asking to borrow a book. I've put in 50 myself, and I've got other investors lined up who can bring another 100. We just need 50 more to complete the package. My mother reached across the table to touch my arm. Your father and I have already contributed what we can. You know how we believe in supporting innovation. I looked at my husband, expecting him to voice the concerns I was feeling. Instead, he nodded encouragingly. We've been saving for something important, he said. This could be a great opportunity. Our savings are for our future, I reminded him quietly. This is our future, he insisted. A family business venture. My brother's eyes lit up. Exactly. This isn't just about money, it's about building something together. I remembered the last 3 opportunities my brother had pursued: the medical billing software that never launched, the healthcare app that folded after 6 months, the telemedicine platform that mysteriously dissolved amid complaints from investors. Jason, I said carefully, your track record with startups isn't exactly, Eleanor. My father's voice carried that familiar edge of disappointment. Your brother has worked hard to learn from past experiences. The least you could do is show some support. My phone vibrated with a text from Michael. Committee meeting moved up. Where are you? I glanced at my watch. I need to get back to the lab. On Sunday? My mother's face crumpled in disapproval. Family time is sacred, Eleanor. I'm conducting important research, Mom. Your research will still be there tomorrow, my father said dismissively. This is a family discussion about your brother's future. I felt my husband's hand on my knee, a silent plea to stay, to go along, to keep the peace. Fine, I said, putting my phone away. Tell me more about this distribution business, Jason. As my brother launched into his pitch, I thought about the neural interface trials waiting for me at the lab, the years of research that might actually help people recover movement after paralysis. None of that mattered here. In this house, around this table, I was still the invisible daughter, the reliable Eleanor who would eventually do what was expected of her. 3 hours later, driving home with my husband, I finally spoke. We're not giving Jason $50,000. Eleanor, be reasonable, he said, eyes on the road. It's a solid business plan. You're an accountant, I replied. You should know better. The numbers don't add up. Numbers aren't everything. Sometimes you have to trust people. Like we trusted him with the investment in his medical billing software. We lost $20,000. My husband sighed. That was different. He was just getting started. Now he has experience. Experience at losing other people's money. He's family, my husband said, as if that explained everything. And perhaps for him, it did. I thought about my own family growing up. How my brother had always been the golden child, his every failure reframed as a valuable learning experience, while my successes were treated as expected, unremarkable. I had married a man who perpetuated exactly the same dynamic. Did you know, I said quietly, that my research team is on the verge of a breakthrough that could help paralysis patients regain motor function? The university is considering our request for additional funding. That's nice, honey, he replied absently. But let's focus on decisions we need to make now. Jason needs an answer by Friday. I turned to look out the window, watching raindrops trace paths down the glass, merging and separating like the choices that had led me to this moment. My husband didn't ask about my research. He never did anymore. Somewhere along the way, he had been absorbed into my family's orbit, becoming yet another person who saw my brother as the star and me as the supporting cast. I'll think about it, I said finally, knowing that this was just the beginning of a battle I had been fighting my entire life. At the laboratory, the university laboratory was quiet on Sunday evening. Most researchers had gone home, but this was where I felt most at peace. Among the equipment and data, I was valued for my mind, for what I could contribute. Here, I wasn't defined by family expectations or marital dynamics. Michael looked up from his computer as I entered. At 50, with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, he had been my colleague and friend since graduate school. We'd built our research program together, specializing in neural interface technology for patients with severe mobility limitations. "How was the family dinner?" he asked, already guessing the answer from my expression. "The usual," I said, hanging up my coat. "My brother needs money for another business venture, and everyone thinks I should provide it." Michael's wife had died from ALS 15 years ago. Since then, he dedicated his life to developing technologies that could help patients with neurodegenerative diseases and spinal cord injuries. He understood what drove me in a way my family, and increasingly, my husband, could not. "How much this time?" he asked. 50,000. He let out a low whistle. "That's not small change, especially when we're trying to secure additional funding for our own research," I agreed, sitting down at my workstation. "The university grant covers the basics, but if we want to expand the trials, we need that private funding," Michael finished. "Speaking of which, our meeting with Dr. Catherine Price is confirmed for next week. If anyone can help us secure investment, it's her." I nodded, pulling up our latest test results. Catherine Price was a renowned investor in medical technology, known for backing innovations that others considered too risky or too slow to market. Her support could change everything for our research. "Sarah's coming in tomorrow for another session," Michael continued, referring to our primary test subject, a former nurse who had become quadriplegic after a car accident. "She's made remarkable progress with the latest interface adjustments." I smiled, remembering Sarah's face when she had first been able to move a cursor on screen using only her thoughts. "That's the best news I've heard all day." Michael studied me for a moment. "Eleanor, about your brother's request. I know what you're going to say." "Do you?" "Because I think you're going to give him the money, even though you know it's a bad investment." I looked away. "It's complicated." "It's not complicated. It's a pattern. Your family pressures you, you resist, they pressure harder, you eventually give in. Then when it fails, somehow it becomes your fault." His words stung because they were true. It was the story of my life, with my parents, with my brother, and now with my husband. Always trying to prove my worth through sacrifice, always ending up undervalued and blamed. "Jason wants an answer by Friday," I said. "Your husband or your brother?" "Both." I sighed. "They're united on this." Michael turned back to his computer. "Well, while you're deciding whether to fund another of your brother's failures, take a look at these results. The neural response patterns from Sarah's last session show a 40% improvement in signal clarity." I moved to look over his shoulder, momentarily forgetting my family drama as I absorbed the implications of the data. That's incredible. If we can replicate these results with other subjects, we could be looking at a viable treatment option within 2 years instead of 5, Michael finished. But not if we lose momentum due to funding issues. The message was clear. The money my brother wanted could make a real difference in our research that could help people like Sarah regain independence and dignity. But my family would never see it that way. To them, my work was just a job, while my brother's endless ventures were visionary enterprises worthy of investment. "I need to think," I said, turning away from the screen. "Don't think too long," Michael replied. "Some opportunities don't come around twice." I wasn't sure if he was talking about our research or my life choices, but either way, I knew he was right. Flashback to childhood. That night, I dreamed of my childhood bedroom. Blue wallpaper with silver stars. Bookshelves overflowing with science texts and journals. A desk where I spent countless hours studying while the sounds of celebration drifted up from downstairs. Another of Jason's baseball victories being commemorated. In the dream, I'm 12 years old, holding a certificate from the state science fair. First place. I descend the stairs slowly, certificate clutched to my chest, excited to show my parents. But the living room is empty except for my cousin Lisa, who's helping to clean up after Jason's party. "They took him for ice cream," Lisa explains, seeing my confusion. to celebrate his home run. I thought they told you. They didn't, I say, the certificate suddenly feeling heavy in my hands. That's a big award, Lisa notices. First place? Eleanor, that's amazing. I nod, trying not to cry. It's okay. I'll show them when they get back. But when they returned, flushed with joy and carrying a baseball trophy for the display cabinet, there wasn't a moment to mention my certificate. Jason was demonstrating his winning swing in the living room, my father playing catcher with rolled up socks. My mother was on the phone, calling relatives to share the news. I remember standing in the hallway, watching them, the certificate still in my hand. Eventually, I went back upstairs and pinned it to my bulletin board myself. It hung there for years, yellowing slightly at the edges, until I left for college. I awoke from the dream with tears on my cheeks, a grown woman still carrying the hurt of that invisible child. Beside me, my husband slept peacefully, unaware of my midnight reckoning. I slipped out of bed and went to the kitchen, where I kept a locked drawer with important documents. Inside was my personal account statement, savings I'd maintained separately from our joint accounts, money from my research grants and consulting work. Money that was mine alone. $50,000. A significant portion of my personal savings, but not devastating if lost. Was family peace worth the price? Would this finally be the time my brother succeeded, proving everyone right about his potential? Or was I simply feeding a pattern that had controlled my life for too long? I closed the drawer without making a decision. Friday was still days away. I would talk to Michael again, weigh the options, consider what this investment would mean for my research, for my marriage, for my sense of self-worth. But deep down, I already knew what would happen. The gravitational pull of family expectation was too strong to resist. It always had been. The bank transfer, Friday, arrived too quickly. I sat at my desk in the lab, staring at my online banking portal. $50,000. The mouse cursor hovered over the transfer button. My phone buzzed with a text from my husband. Did you do it yet? Jason's asking. Another message followed immediately. Don't overthink this, Eleanor. It's an investment in our future. I put the phone down without answering and turned back to the computer screen. Across the lab, Michael was working with Sarah, our quadriplegic test subject. Through our neural interface, she was slowly learning to control a robotic arm, her concentration evident in her furrowed brow. That's it, Michael encouraged as the mechanical fingers trembled then closed around a small ball. Perfect, Sarah. Sarah's face lit up with achievement, and I felt a surge of pride in our work. This was tangible progress, not a speculative business venture, but technology that was already changing lives. My phone buzzed again. My brother this time. Hey sis, just checking on that transfer. Got a supplier meeting at 4. Need to show them the capital's secured. I closed my eyes, remembering all the times I'd tried to share my research breakthroughs with my family. The glazed expressions, the quick changes of subject, the inevitable return to Jason's latest ventures. In their eyes, my work would never be as exciting or worthy as his entrepreneurial pursuits. Everything okay? Michael asked, approaching my desk. Just making a decision, I replied, my finger still hovering over the mouse. He glanced at my screen and frowned. Eleanor, I know what you're going to say. I cut him off. But you don't understand the pressure. It's not just my brother. It's my husband, my parents. It's years of being told that supporting family is the highest priority. Your research matters too, Michael said quietly. What we're doing here matters. Across the lab, Sarah was still practicing with the robotic arm, her face as steady in concentration and hope. I thought about what our research funding could accomplish, the patients we could help if we expanded our trials. I thought about Catherine Price's upcoming visit and the impression we needed to make. Then I thought about the inevitable family fallout if I refused my brother's request. The accusations of selfishness, the cold shoulders, the strain on my already fragile marriage. I clicked the transfer button. The confirmation appeared on screen, cheerful and oblivious to my inner conflict. Transfer complete. $50,000. I felt nothing. No relief, no satisfaction in fulfilling my family's expectations. Just emptiness, and the certainty that I had once again betrayed myself. I hope you know what you're doing, Michael said, his disappointment evident. I don't, I admitted. But it's done now. My phone immediately buzzed with messages of gratitude from my brother, my husband, my parents. Effusive thanks for my investment in the family's future. I put the phone in my drawer without responding and turned back to my work, trying to focus on the data rather than the hollow feeling in my chest. But as I watched Sarah successfully grasp objects with the robotic arm, each movement a small miracle of science and human determination, I couldn't help wondering what miracles our research might achieve with an extra $50,000 of funding. By Monday, my brother had announced the expansion of his medical equipment distribution company on social media. By Tuesday, he'd leased new office space. By Wednesday, he'd hired 3 employees, including Jennifer, his former business partner from a previous failed venture. And by the following month, I'd almost convinced myself that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. The accusation, 6 months later, the hospital cafeteria buzzed with lunchtime activity. Doctors in white coats, nurses in scrubs, researchers like me in casual business attire, all mingling in the carefully maintained neutrality of institutional dining. I was picking at a salad when I spotted them. My brother, my husband, and my parents scanning the room with determined expressions. My mother saw me first, her face immediately arranging itself into a mask of disappointment that I'd grown all too familiar with over the years. They made their way to my table, my father leading the charge with military precision. "We need to talk," he announced, pulling out a chair without waiting for an invitation. "I'm at work," I replied, acutely aware of my colleagues at nearby tables. "This isn't the place. It wouldn't be necessary if you answer your phone," my mother said, sitting down beside my father. "We've been trying to reach you for days." My husband took the seat beside me, not meeting my eyes. My brother remained standing, arms crossed, expression thunderous. "What's going on?" I asked, though I already knew. The signs had been there for weeks. My brother's vague updates, my husband's evasive answers when I asked about the business, the sudden cessation of family dinner invitations. "Your brother's business is facing some challenges," my father began diplomatically. "Bankruptcy," my brother corrected bluntly. "We're filing for bankruptcy." The word hung in the air between us. 6 months. It had taken just 6 months for $50,000 to evaporate. "What happened?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "What happened?" My brother's voice rose, drawing glances from nearby tables. "Is that you sabotaged us from the beginning with your negative energy and constant questioning." "Jason," my husband said quietly, "let's keep this civil." "Civil?" My brother laughed bitterly. "She's been undermining me since day one. Always asking for reports, demanding updates, making Jennifer uncomfortable with her interrogations about the business model. I sent 3 emails in 6 months asking for basic financial statements," I clarified, aware of a colleague watching our exchange with concern. "That's hardly sabotage." "You know your brother doesn't think in terms of spreadsheets and reports," my mother said. "He's a visionary. You put too much pressure on him with your constant demands for—" "What did you call them, Jason?" "Metrics," my brother supplied. "Always metrics and KPIs and ROI projections. You suffocated the creative process." I stared at them, momentarily speechless. My investment, my $50,000, and somehow I was to blame for asking how it was being spent? "Where did the money go?" I finally asked. My father cleared his throat. "There were necessary expenditures. Office space, staff salaries, business development trips." "Business development in Aspen?" I asked, remembering the social media posts I'd seen of my brother and Jennifer at a ski resort. "Was that necessary?" "That was a networking opportunity with potential hospital clients," my brother said defensively. "And the new BMW?" My husband shifted uncomfortably beside me. "Eleanor, this isn't helping." "You're right," I agreed, suddenly calm. "This isn't helping because nothing I say will change the fact that my money is gone and somehow it's my fault." "Not all of it," my mother offered, as if this were consolation. "There are some assets that might be liquidated in the bankruptcy." "What's done is done," my father declared, his tone suggesting the matter was closed. The question now is how we move forward as a family. I looked at each of them in turn. My father's authoritative expression, my mother's practiced disappointment, my brother's self righteous anger, my husband's uncomfortable avoidance. How we move forward, I repeated slowly, is that I go back to my research, which is what I should have been funding all along. Is that all you care about? My brother exploded. Your precious research? What about my reputation? What about the family name? Several heads turned our way. I saw Michael enter the cafeteria, spot our table, and pause, clearly assessing whether I needed rescue. Lower your voice, my husband urged my brother. People are staring. Let them stare. My brother stood up, towering over the table. My sister thinks her lab rats are more important than family loyalty. Michael was moving toward us now, his expression concerned. I caught his eye and gave a slight shake of my head. This was my battle. Sarah is not a lab rat, I said quietly but firmly. She's a quadriplegic former nurse who can now use a robotic arm thanks to our neural interface. That's what my money could have been supporting instead of your business development trips. There she goes again with the guilt trip, my mother sighed dramatically. Always making us feel small about her important scientific work. That's not we get it, Eleanor, my father cut in. You're the smart one, the successful one, the one who never makes mistakes. But family means supporting each other through failures, not judging. Even when those failures are predictable and preventable? I asked. Even when they cost me $50,000 of my personal savings? My husband finally spoke. It was an investment we made together, Eleanor. As a family. And now we need to deal with the consequences together. I looked at him, truly looked at him, and suddenly saw with perfect clarity what I had been avoiding for months, maybe years. My husband wasn't my partner. He was another person who expected me to sacrifice my dreams, my work, my self-respect on the altar of family unity. No, I said, the word surprisingly easy to pronounce. I don't think we do. What's that supposed to mean? My husband asked, his voice hardening. It means I'm done, I replied, standing up. Done being the family ATM. Done being blamed for other people's irresponsibility. Done with all of it. Eleanor, you're making a scene, my mother hissed, glancing around at the interested onlookers. I'm not the one who came to my workplace to accuse me of sabotaging a business that failed due to mismanagement and extravagance, I pointed out. I have patients waiting and research that actually matters. Excuse me. As I walked away, my brother called after me. This isn't over, Eleanor. You can't just walk away from family. But I could. And I did. Michael caught up with me in the hallway. I take it the distribution business didn't work out? Bankruptcy, I confirmed, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. And apparently it's my fault for asking too many questions about where my money went. He nodded, unsurprised. What now? I thought about my husband's face when he'd said we needed to deal with the consequences together. As if his blind support of my brother's venture hadn't contributed to its failure, as if I hadn't warned them from the beginning. Now, I said, I focus on what matters. Our research. The neural interface trials. The patients who are counting on us. And your husband? Michael asked carefully. I paused, the reality of my situation suddenly crystal clear. I think I need a divorce lawyer. The choice. That evening, I sat in our apartment alone, waiting for my husband to return. The confrontation in the cafeteria had clearly been a coordinated intervention, my family's attempt to make me feel responsible for my brother's business failure. The fact that my husband had participated told me everything I needed to know about where his loyalties lay. When the door finally opened, he entered cautiously, as if approaching a wounded animal. Eleanor, we need to talk. Yes, we do, I agreed, gesturing to the chair across from me. He sat down, running a hand through his hair. That didn't go well today. No, it didn't. I kept my voice calm, detached. Your ambush at my workplace was inappropriate and embarrassing. It wasn't an ambush, he protested. Your parents were concerned. They couldn't reach you, because I stopped answering their calls after the fifth voicemail blaming me for Jason's poor business decisions. He sighed heavily. Look, I know you're upset about the money. This isn't about money, I interrupted. It's about respect. It's about supporting each other's dreams and priorities. When was the last time you asked me about my research? He blinked, caught off guard by the question. I. You don't really talk about it. I used to, I said quietly. All the time. Until I realized you weren't listening. That's not fair. Isn't it? 3 years ago, when we got married, you used to visit the lab. You were interested in the work, excited about the possibilities. Then you met my family, and gradually, you became one of them, another person who sees Jason as the star and me as the supporting cast. He shifted uncomfortably. Your brother is charismatic, Eleanor. People are drawn to him. That doesn't mean I don't value you. Value me enough to consult me before committing to invest in his business? Value me enough to question his plans when they started to fall apart? Value me enough to stand by me today instead of joining the chorus blaming me for his failure? Family is complicated, he said weakly. Yes, it is, I agreed. Which is why I've made a decision. I'm moving out. The words hung between us, heavy with finality. You're overreacting, he said, his voice rising slightly. This will blow over. Your brother will find another opportunity. Your parents will calm down. And we'll do this all over again. I finished for him. Another business, another investment, another failure, another round of blame. I can't do it anymore, Jason. I won't. So you're just giving up? On your family? On our marriage? I thought about my childhood, about the science fair certificate yelling on my bulletin board while trophies for Jason crowded the family display cabinet. I thought about my parents' dismissal of my research, their indifference to my academic achievements. I thought about my husband, gradually transformed from a supportive partner into yet another person who expected me to sacrifice my dreams for my brother's fantasies. I'm not giving up, I said finally. I'm choosing a different path. One where my work matters, where my contributions are valued, where I'm not constantly asked to set myself on fire to keep others warm. Eleanor, please. He reached for my hand. We can work through this. I pulled away gently. I've already contacted a lawyer. I'm filing for divorce. His face hardened. So that's it? 5 years of marriage, thrown away over one family disagreement? It's not one disagreement, I replied. It's a pattern. One I've been living with my entire life. I just never had the courage to break it until now. He stood up abruptly. Your parents were right about you. Always thinking you're better than everyone else with your fancy research and academic achievements. Too cold to understand what family really means. The words stung, but not as much as they once would have. Is that what they say about me when I'm not there? He had the grace to look slightly ashamed. I didn't mean that. Yes, you did, I said. And it's fine. I've spent my whole life trying to earn love and respect from people who were incapable of giving it. I'm done trying. What do you expect me to tell your family? The truth would be nice, I suggested. But I suspect you'll tell them whatever narrative makes them feel better about themselves. He paced the living room, agitation evident in every movement. This is insane. You're throwing away everything over money. I'm not throwing away anything worth keeping, I replied. And I told you, this isn't about money. It's about respect. Self-respect, in particular. And our future? What about the life we planned? I laughed softly, without humor. What life, Jason? The one where I fund my brother's endless failed ventures while my own work is treated as a hobby? The one where I'm expected to apologize for asking basic questions about where my money goes? That's not a future I want anymore. He grabbed his keys from the counter. I need some air. We'll talk when you're being reasonable. After he left, I sat in the quiet apartment for a long time, waiting for the regret or uncertainty to set in. It never came. Instead, I felt a strange, surprising lightness, as if I'd set down a burden I'd been carrying for too long. I picked up my phone and called Michael. It's done, I said when he answered. I told him I want a divorce. Michael was silent for a moment. Are you okay? Better than okay, I realized. I feel free. What's your plan? Short term, I'll stay with Lisa until I find my own place. Long term. I took a deep breath. I want to expand our research. The neural interface is working better than we'd hoped. With Catherine Price's investment, we could help so many more patients. Catherine confirmed for Wednesday, Michael said. I think she'll be impressed with our progress, especially with Sarah. Sarah's our future, I agreed. Not my brother's imaginary business empire. After we hung up, I began packing a suitcase with essentials. As I folded clothes and gathered toiletries, I thought about the path that had led me here, years of seeking approval from people who were constitutionally incapable of giving it, of diminishing myself to avoid outshining my brother, of compromising my work and my values to maintain family peace. The pattern was so clear now, seen from the outside. My parents had raised Jason to expect success without effort, praise without achievement. They'd raised me to provide support without recognition, to contribute without acknowledgement. And I'd married a man who perpetuated exactly the same dynamic. But patterns can be broken. Cycles can end. Tonight, I was choosing a different path, one defined not by my family's expectations, but by my own values, my own work, my own definition of success. As I closed my suitcase, I felt ready to begin again. The breakthrough. 3 months passed. I moved into a small apartment near the university, filed for divorce, and poured myself into my research. The neural interface trials were exceeding our expectations, with Sarah mastering increasingly complex tasks using just her thoughts. Catherine Price had visited our lab as planned, observed our work with Sarah, and invested $1 million in our research program. This technology isn't just innovative, she'd said after watching Sarah control a robotic arm to pick up and drink from a cup of water. It's life-changing. My ex-husband had moved in with my parents temporarily, further cementing the family lines that had been drawn. According to Lisa, who still maintained contact with them, they spoke of me as if I'd had some kind of breakdown, the daughter who'd abandoned her family responsibilities to pursue selfish academic interests. I should have been hurt by this characterization, but instead I found it oddly liberating. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to win their approval or justify my choices. I was simply living according to my own values, pursuing work that mattered. On a bright Tuesday morning, I arrived at the lab to find Michael and Sarah already there, both looking unusually excited. What's going on? I asked, setting down my coffee. Show her, Michael said to Sarah. Sarah grinned. I've been practicing at home with the portable interface. Watch this. She concentrated, and on the computer screen before her, a word processing document opened. Then, letter by letter, she began to type using only her thoughts. Dear Dr. Collins, last night I wrote a full email to my children without any assistance. For the first time in 15 years, I was able to communicate my exact thoughts without depending on someone else to interpret or help. You have given me back my voice. Thank you isn't enough. I felt tears spring to my eyes. Sarah, that's incredible. The interface adaptation you designed for home use is working perfectly, Michael said. The signal clarity has improved another 20% since last week. Sarah nodded enthusiastically. And I'm getting faster every day. Soon I'll be ready for the more complex integration, the wheelchair control system. I checked the monitoring data, hardly daring to believe what I was seeing. The neural pathways we'd been targeting were showing signs of actual regeneration, not just workarounds, but real healing. This goes beyond assistive technology, I said slowly. We're seeing neuroplasticity that shouldn't be possible according to conventional understanding. I've been thinking the same thing, Michael agreed. What if the interface isn't just bypassing damaged pathways, but somehow stimulating new ones? If that's true, I trailed off, the implications almost too enormous to articulate. If that's true, Sarah finished for me, then you're not just giving people like me tools to work around our paralysis. You might actually be helping us heal. The three of us fell silent, absorbing the magnitude of what this could mean. Not just for Sarah, but for millions of people with spinal cord injuries, neurodegenerative diseases, stroke damage. The potential applications were staggering. We need to document everything, I said finally. Run more tests, gather more data. If we're right about this, when are you presenting at the neuroscience conference? Sarah asked. Next month, Michael replied. But with these results, we might want to consider publishing sooner. I nodded, already mentally drafting the paper. I'll start writing today. Sarah, are you comfortable being our primary case study? It would mean a lot more tests, more documentation of your progress. Are you kidding? Sarah laughed. I've been a nurse for 30 years. I know how important this is. Document everything. Take all the scans you need. This isn't just about me anymore. As we began planning the expanded testing protocol, my phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. Family drama escalating. Jason's business debts worse than anyone knew. Your parents remortgaged their house to cover some of it. They're blaming you for not being there for them. Call me when you can. Once, that message would have sent me spiraling into guilt and self-doubt. Now, I simply set the phone aside. My family's financial choices were not my responsibility. My work that was genuinely helping people like Sarah, that was my responsibility. Everything okay? Michael asked, noticing my brief distraction. Everything's fine, I said, and meant it. Let's focus on what matters. As Sarah demonstrated her growing mastery of the neural interface, I felt a profound sense of purpose and clarity. This was what success looked like, not my brother's flashy ventures or my parents' social standing, but tangible, meaningful impact on human lives. For the first time, I was grateful for the painful journey that had led me here. Without the catalyst of my brother's business failure and my family's reaction to it, I might never have found the courage to break free from patterns that had held me back for decades. Their rejection had become my liberation. And now, that freedom was leading to breakthroughs that might change countless lives. The publication, the Neurological Journal article, was published on a Thursday. By Friday morning, it had been downloaded over 10,000 times, shared by medical professionals worldwide, and featured in several major science publications. Our findings, particularly the unexpected neural regeneration observed in Sarah's case, were being described as groundbreaking and paradigm-shifting. David Matthews, a respected medical journalist, requested an interview for an in-depth feature. His reputation for thorough, thoughtful reporting made him the perfect person to help translate our complex research for a broader audience. This technology has implications far beyond what we initially anticipated, I explained as David recorded our conversation in the lab. We started with the goal of creating better assistive devices for paralysis patients, but we're seeing evidence of actual neural pathway restoration. In lay terms, David clarified, you're saying this might not just help people work around paralysis, but potentially heal it? We need to be very cautious about making such claims, I cautioned. What we're seeing in Sarah's case is promising but preliminary. We need much more data, more subjects, more time. Sarah, who had insisted on being part of the interview, added her perspective. I was told 15 years ago that my condition was permanent and irreversible. Now I can control devices with my thoughts, and according to the scans, there's actual nerve regeneration happening. Even if it's slow, even if it's limited, it's hope where there was none before. David turned to Michael. Dar Bennett, you lost your wife to ALS 15 years ago. How does this research connect to that personal experience? Michael's expression softened. After Emily died, I dedicated my career to helping patients with neurodegenerative conditions. Working with Dr. Collins has allowed us to make progress I couldn't have imagined back then. It's too late for Emily, but for future patients, perhaps even current ones, this could change everything. And the investment from Catherine Price has accelerated your research? I nodded. Our funding has been crucial. We've been able to expand our test group from 1 patient to 15, upgrade our equipment, and increase our research staff. One last question, David said, checking his notes. I understand there was some family drama surrounding your early research funding. Your brother's business venture was somehow involved? I tensed slightly. This was exactly the kind of personal detail I preferred to keep separate from my professional work. But before I could formulate a diplomatic response, Sarah spoke up. I don't know all the details, she said firmly, but I do know that Dr. Collins made significant personal sacrifices to pursue this research. When other investment opportunities presented themselves, opportunities that might have been more financially rewarding in the short term, She chose to prioritize work that would help people like me. That says everything about her character that needs saying. David nodded, seeming to recognize the boundaries being drawn. Fair enough. I'm more interested in the science anyway. After he left, promising to send a draft of the article before publication, I thanked Sarah for her intervention. I just told the truth, she said simply. You gave up a lot to be here, doing this work. That matters. I thought about what I'd given up: a marriage that diminished me, family relationships built on obligation rather than mutual respect, financial resources that would have been wasted on my brother's ill-conceived ventures. In return, I'd gained purpose, clarity, and the profound satisfaction of seeing our research help people like Sarah. It didn't feel like sacrifice at all. It felt like exchange, trading the illusion of family harmony for the reality of meaningful work. The next morning, David's feature was published in a major medical journal, complete with photographs of Sarah demonstrating the neural interface technology and quotes from other neurologists hailing our research as potentially revolutionary. By noon, my phone was flooded with messages, from colleagues congratulating me, from other researchers wanting to collaborate, from patients desperate to join our trials, and inevitably, from my family. My mother: saw your name in the paper. Hope you're taking care of yourself. Dad's blood pressure is up again. Jason's looking for new investors. My ex-husband: impressive article. We should talk sometime. I miss you. My brother: hey sis, amazing work. Very proud. Quick question. Do you think any of your investor contacts might be interested in my new healthcare logistics concept? It's really aligned with your research. Coffee soon? I read each message, noting how even their congratulations came with hooks, subtle reminders of family obligations, hints at reconciliation on their terms, attempts to leverage my success for their benefit. Once, I would have responded immediately, eager for any sign of approval or connection. Now, I simply set the phone aside. More family communications? Michael asked, noting my expression. Predictable ones, I replied. They've noticed I'm successful now, so suddenly I exist again. He gave me a knowing look. And how does that make you feel? I considered the question carefully. Validated in a strange way. They've always been most interested in me when they thought I could do something for them. The fact that they're reaching out now just confirms what I already knew. Are you going to respond? I glanced at my phone again, then at the lab where Sarah was working with two other patients, showing them how to use the neural interface. Real people, real impact, real purpose. Eventually, I said. But not today. Today belongs to the work. The confrontation, the annual Collins family dinner, was a tradition I'd avoided since filing for divorce. But with my parents' health declining and Lisa's gentle encouragement, I finally agreed to attend. Just one dinner, Lisa had said. Show them you're thriving, then leave. Closure, Eleanor. For yourself, not for them. I chose my outfit carefully, a simple but elegant dress, professional without being severe. No wedding ring, but the small sapphire earrings my grandmother had left me. My divorce had been finalized 3 months earlier, my research was flourishing, and I felt centered in a way I hadn't for years. My father opened the door, looking older than I remembered. Eleanor, he said formally. You came. I said I would. I handed him the bottle of wine I'd brought. Not a peace offering exactly, just a social nicety. Inside, my mother was fussing over the table settings, moving forks and adjusting napkins with nervous energy. My brother sat in our father's usual chair at the head of the table, scrolling through his phone. My ex-husband, surprisingly, was nowhere to be seen. Jason couldn't make it, my mother explained, following my glance. Work emergency. He sends his regrets. Of course he did. I was both relieved and irritated. Relieved to avoid the awkwardness. Irritated that he still took the coward's way out when things got difficult. Martha, my father called. Eleanor's here. My mother looked up, her expression a complex mixture of emotions: love, resentment, pride, disappointment. You look well, she said, coming to air kiss my cheek. Success agrees with you. Thank you, I replied simply. You've redecorated. After we paid off Jason's debts, we had to downsize a bit, she said, a hint of accusation in her tone. But we're managing. My brother looked up from his phone. Sis, great to see you. Congrats on the big research breakthrough. Everyone's talking about it. I nodded my acknowledgement but didn't gush with gratitude for his attention. That would have been the old pattern, eagerly accepting any crumb of recognition. The new Eleanor didn't need their validation. Dinner was a carefully choreographed dance around difficult topics. My mother asked polite questions about my laboratory work, as if it were a hobby rather than a groundbreaking research program. My father inquired about my new apartment with the air of someone confirming I was properly housed despite my questionable life choices. My brother alternated between exaggerated interest in my research and not so subtle hints about his latest business concept. It's actually in the medical technology space, he said, cutting into his salmon. Distribution of specialized neural equipment. Right in your wheelhouse, actually. Interesting, I replied neutrally. Who's your market research consultant? He blinked, wrong-footed by the direct question. Well, I'm still in the planning stages, but I've got some great projections based on industry trends. You should talk to Jennifer, I suggested mildly. She has experience in that sector. The table went silent. Jennifer had been the one to finally reveal the full extent of my brother's financial mismanagement during the bankruptcy proceedings. That's unnecessary, my mother said stiffly. Your brother has excellent business instincts. He just needs the right support system. And there it was, the familiar implication that his failures were due to external factors, never to his own choices or actions. Speaking of support systems, my father interjected, clearly trying to change the subject. We've been thinking about our arrangements as we get older. The house is becoming a bit much to manage. We thought perhaps you might consider having us move in with you, my mother added, as if it were the most natural suggestion in the world. Just temporarily, until we sort out our next steps. I set down my fork. My one-bedroom apartment isn't suitable for 3 people. Well, with your new success, we assumed you'd be upgrading soon, my father said reasonably. A nice house, perhaps. Something with room for family. My current place suits me perfectly, I replied. And I'm not planning to move. But surely with the increased funding for your research, your salary has. My personal finances aren't relevant to this discussion, I interrupted gently but firmly. I'm not in a position to offer housing, and frankly, I don't think living together would be healthy for any of us. My mother's face fell. After everything we've done for you, Eleanor, all the sacrifices. I took a sip of water, considering my response carefully. Once, that guilt trip would have worked perfectly. Now, I could see it for what it was, emotional manipulation. What sacrifices specifically, Mom? I asked quietly. Excuse me? You mentioned sacrifices. I'm curious what you meant by that. My father set down his knife with a sharp click against the plate. Your mother means the lifetime of support we've given you. The education, the opportunities. My education was funded by scholarships that I earned, I pointed out. And as for opportunities, I seem to recall many that were dismissed or overshadowed by Jason's activities. Here we go, my brother muttered. Still bitter after all these years. Not bitter, I corrected him. Just accurate. I've had a lot of time to reflect on our family dynamics recently. Would you like to know what I've realized? Eleanor, my mother warned. This isn't the time. It's exactly the time, I replied. You invited me here, presumably to reconnect. Real connection requires honesty. I turned to my brother. Jason, I don't resent you for being Mom and Dad's favorite. That wasn't your choice or your fault. What I resent is your persistent unwillingness to take responsibility for your actions and their consequences. That's not. I gave you $50,000 for your business, I continued calmly. Money that could have funded my research for patients who desperately needed help. You spent it on luxury trips, leased a BMW, and then had the audacity to blame me when the venture failed. I turned to my parents. And you enabled him. You always have. You reframed his failures as learning experiences while treating my successes as obligations. When he failed, it was circumstance. When I succeeded, it was expected. My father's face had reddened dangerously. We raised you both the best we could. I believe you did, I agreed. But your best included some serious blind spots and double standards. So that's why you came tonight? My mother's voice quavered. To attack us? To punish us? No, I said softly. I came because despite everything, you're still my family. And I thought perhaps, with time and distance, we might find a healthier way to relate to each other. By accusing us of playing favorites? My father demanded. By acknowledging the patterns that hurt all of us, I clarified. Jason was never allowed to fail, so he never learned from his mistakes. I was never allowed to outshine him, so I diminished myself for years. None of us got what we really needed. The silence that followed was heavy with decades of unspoken truths. My brother stared at his plate. My father's jaw worked as if he were physically restraining words. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. I don't expect you to suddenly see our history differently, I said into the silence. But I needed to say these things, for my own clarity if nothing else. And now what? My father asked stiffly. You've said your piece. Where does that leave us? I considered the question carefully. That depends on whether any of you can acknowledge even a fraction of what I've described. If not, then we continue as we have been, distant but civil. If yes, maybe something better is possible. My brother surprised me by speaking first. You're not entirely wrong, he admitted reluctantly. About me, I mean. I have. I've been irresponsible with money, with opportunities. My parents looked at him in shock. This wasn't part of the family script. The bankruptcy was humiliating, he continued. Having to move back home at my age, having all my fancy plans collapse. It forced me to look at some uncomfortable truths. Jason, my mother began. You don't need to. Let him speak, Martha, my father said unexpectedly. Jason met my eyes directly for what felt like the first time in years. I never thanked you properly for the investment. Never apologized for wasting it. I was too busy deflecting blame, preserving my ego. So, thank you. And I'm sorry. The simple words hung in the air, unexpected and powerful. I hadn't come seeking an apology, had long since written off that money as the price of my freedom. But hearing him acknowledge the reality of what had happened felt surprisingly healing. Thank you, I said simply. That means more than you might think. My parents remained silent, not yet ready or able to examine their role in our family dynamics. That was okay. Rome wasn't built in a day, and family patterns didn't change overnight. Your research, my father said finally, changing the subject. The article we read, it's really helping people? I allowed the pivot, recognizing it as progress of a sort. Yes. We have 15 patients in the trial now, all showing significant improvements in neural function. Sarah, our first patient, has regained limited movement in her right hand. Actual physical movement, not just control of external devices. That's quite remarkable, my father acknowledged. It is. I agree. And it's just the beginning. The rest of the dinner was less charged, but something fundamental had shifted. We weren't healed, not even close, but perhaps we'd taken a first step toward a more honest relationship. As I was leaving, my brother walked me to my car. I meant what I said in there, he told me. I am sorry. I've been getting help. Therapy. Trying to understand why I keep making the same mistakes. That's good, Jason. I'm glad. Your research really is incredible, he added. I'm proud of you. Not in that weird competitive way, but genuinely proud. You're helping people. I smiled slightly. That's all I've ever wanted to do. He hesitated, then asked, Do you think we'll ever be close again? Like when we were kids? I don't know, I answered honestly. But I think we might find a new way to be family, one that's healthier for both of us. It won't happen overnight, though. Fair enough. He offered his hand, and I shook it, a formal gesture, but one with a hint of new respect embedded in it. As I drove away, I felt neither the elation of victory nor the heaviness of continued conflict. Instead, I felt something quieter and more sustainable, the peace that comes from speaking your truth, regardless of how it's received. I had said what needed saying. The rest wasn't up to me. Epilogue: 2 years later, the International Neuroscience Conference in Geneva was packed, every seat taken in the main auditorium as I prepared to present our team's latest findings. 2 years had passed since the publication of our initial research, and the neural interface technology had evolved beyond our most optimistic projections. Sarah sat beside me on the stage, no longer in a wheelchair, but using a walker, a transformation that would have seemed miraculous 3 years ago. Behind us, a screen displayed brain scans showing the neural regeneration patterns we documented across 47 patients in our expanded clinical trials. Ready? I asked her quietly as the conference moderator prepared to introduce us. Sarah nodded, her eyes bright with purpose. Let's change some more lives today. As the moderator called my name, I scanned the audience briefly. In the third row, Michael sat with our research team. In the fifth row, Catherine Price, our primary investor, followed by journalists including David Matthews. And in the back, somewhat to my surprise, my parents and brother. They had flown to Geneva at Jason's insistence. Our relationship had evolved slowly over the past 2 years, not to the false harmony of my childhood, but to something more honest. My brother had finally found his footing, working for a legitimate medical supply company rather than chasing entrepreneurial fantasies. My parents remained somewhat set in their ways, but they had begun, however haltingly, to acknowledge me as an independent adult with valid choices rather than the family disappointment. Dr. Eleanor Collins, the moderator, was saying, has pioneered neural interface technology that is not merely assistive but regenerative, challenging our fundamental understanding of neuroplasticity and recovery potential. I stepped to the podium, feeling centered and confident. Thank you for that kind introduction. I'm honored to be here today to share the results of our team's research over the past 3 years. For the next 40 minutes, I presented our findings, the patterns of neural regeneration, the recovery milestones, the quality of life improvements, the unexpected discoveries along the way. Then Sarah joined me at the podium to share her experience as both patient and now research team member. 3 years ago, I was told my condition was permanent, she told the audience. Today, I can stand. I can move my right arm. I can hold my grandchild. Her voice broke slightly. Dora Collins and her team didn't just develop technology, they restored hope. The standing ovation that followed was thunderous. As researchers and doctors crowded forward with questions and congratulations, I caught glimpses of my family in the back of the room. My father nodding with something like pride. My mother wiping away tears. My brother giving me a thumbs up. Hours later, after the formal proceedings had concluded, we gathered in the hotel restaurant, my research team, my family, Catherine Price, and several key collaborators from other institutions. An unlikely assembly, but somehow fitting. A toast, Michael proposed, raising his glass. To Eleanor, whose vision and persistence made all of this possible. As glasses clinked and congratulations flowed, my mother leaned close to me. I didn't understand before, she said quietly. Your work, what it meant. I do now. It wasn't quite an apology for years of dismissal and favoritism, but it was something. Progress, of a sort. Thank you, I replied simply. Family photo? Jason suggested, holding up his phone. All of us together? Once, such a request would have been laden with complicated feelings, memories of being pushed to the back in family photos, of being an afterthought. Now, I could accept it at face value. Sure, I agreed. But let's include Sarah and Michael too. Their family in their own way. As we gathered for the photo, researchers, patients, investors, and blood relatives all mixed together, I realized how much my definition of family had expanded. It was no longer limited to the people who shared my DNA, but included those who shared my values, my work, my purpose. Later that night, alone in my hotel room, I opened my laptop to review my notes for tomorrow's session. A new email arrived from Lisa. Saw the conference live stream. So proud of you, cuz. You've come so far from those family dinners where no one listened. Now the whole world is listening. I smiled at her message, thinking about the journey of the past few years. The painful separation from my family and then husband. The focus on research that had seemed like solitary refuge but had blossomed into meaningful connection with patients like Sarah and colleagues around the world. The gradual, imperfect reconciliation with my family on new, more honest terms. The cost had been real, but the rewards had been greater. By breaking free from patterns that diminished me, I had found my true voice and purpose. By refusing to continue enabling my brother's irresponsibility, I had paradoxically helped him find a more sustainable path. By speaking painful truths to my parents, I had opened the possibility, however slim, of a more authentic relationship. Most importantly, by choosing my work over familial obligation, I had helped create technology that was literally helping people walk again, communicate again, hope again. I closed my laptop and walked to the window, looking out at the lights of Geneva reflected in the lake. Tomorrow would bring more discussions, more questions, more discoveries. The work continued, evolving and expanding in ways I couldn't have imagined when I signed those divorce papers 3 years ago. That signature, the moment I chose myself over old patterns, had been the true beginning of everything that followed. Not an ending at all, but a doorway to possibility. I was no longer the invisible daughter, the reliable Eleanor who sacrificed her dreams for family harmony. I was Dr. Eleanor Collins, pioneer in neural interface technology. I was a woman who had learned that sometimes, walking away is the bravest form of moving forward. And I was exactly where I needed to be,